We got the Lakers tonight, Cal.
Beat LA. Beat LA.
Check it out.
What's up, Kings fans? Welcome to another episode of the Royal Report with Calvin and Barry, a Sacramento Kings sports talk show. We talk about your Sacramento Kings and we release a new episode on YouTube every Friday. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, and if you're new to this channel, go ahead and introduce yourself down below in the comments. With only 10 games left in this NBA season, many Kings fans, myself included, are very disappointed with the outcome of this season, but we are setting our eyes on the offseason, the NBA draft, and Calvin and I are going to wrap up the rest of the season on this week's show.
Yeah, welcome in everyone. With only 10 games to go, I'm sure we're speaking to only the most loyal of Kings fans out there, but we are happy to have you all here for another episode of the Royal Report. On today's show, the Kings extend Metu and Jones. Barry and I will take a look at the latest NBA mock drafts and we'll give you an idea of what to expect from Royal Rebounds this summer as well. But we begin the show the same way we do every week with highlights from around the league. Marcus Smart was suspended by the league for one game for, quote, threatening language directed towards an official after the Celtics' loss on Tuesday night to the Oklahoma City Thunder. He served that suspension the following night in a Celtics win against the Charlotte Hornets. Brad Stevens said he learned of Smart's suspension just hours before tip-off in that Wednesday night win over Charlotte. A lot of confusion there, but Smart served the suspension nonetheless and is now back in action for Boston. At age 31, DeMar DeRozan continues the evolution and growth of his game as an NBA player. He is having one of the best years of his career in San Antonio, averaging 21.5 points, 7 assists, 4 rebounds, and 1 steal. DeRozan has always been known as a go-to scorer, but his playmaking has really taken a huge leap this year. He has 13 games of 10 or more assists this season. Prior to this year, he only had 13 such games for his entire career. DeRozan is arguably one of the biggest name free agents on the market this summer, and his play as of late will only help that going into the offseason. Another two players who are really playing well as of late are the Killer Jays in Beantown. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have been playing well all year, but they've really turned it up a notch as of late. One of the two of them has scored 32 or more points in 6 of Boston's last 9 games as they continue to make a push for the postseason. The two are averaging career highs in points per game. Jason Tatum averaging 25.8 points per game and Jaylen Brown averaging 24.9 respectively. Barry, I wouldn't want to see Boston if I was any team in the Eastern Conference playoffs first round.
Yeah, don't let their record fool you. That is a very, very talented team. They have slipped in the standings. There's been talk about maybe it's time for them to trade some of those guys and bring in another star to help them win games. But that Eastern Conference is a gauntlet. And speaking of which, the Milwaukee Bucks just lost their star player last night. As we say on this show, injury. Giannis Antetokounmpo only logged 46 seconds in the game on Thursday night before tweaking his ankle in a loss against the Houston Rockets. Speaking of losses, the Minnesota Timberwolves have been known all season for piling up losses. However, they have just recently completed a sweep of the NBA's league record best team in the Utah Jazz, winning 3 games against them this year. They've also beat the Kings twice this year. That makes 5 out of their 18 wins, almost a third against the Jazz and the Kings. That is truly incredible. We're going to take a quick break, and when we get back, we're going to dive into the Jazz's thumping of the Sacramento Kings this week.
One thing I think that you see with this Dallas team as we see Harrison Barnes. Okay. In fuego, Mark
Well, we knew it was going to be a rough week when it was announced Saturday morning that De'Aaron Fox would be sidelined 10 to 14 games due to health and safety protocols. Followed up that evening by a loss to the Golden State Warriors, 37 points for Steph Curry, setting new records, 24 points for Haliburton, 25 for Buddy Hield. It was a rough game to watch for a Sacramento Kings fan. I'm not going to lie, I didn't watch many of the games this week. I watched highlights, but as far as live action, you can put me in less than 10 minutes of live action. Calvin, what do you think about that Warriors game?
Well, unfortunately, I'm right there with you on the 10 minutes of live action. It was a disappointing start to the week to lose a guy like De'Aaron Fox, obviously. Even though Rashawn Holmes has been back now and has played very well for the Kings, it's been good to see that. If only we could play the Mavericks every night, right? They seem to have Dallas's number, and good news, we do get to play Dallas again this coming week. But man, if the nail wasn't already in the coffin for the Sacramento Kings, how about a 49-point loss at home? I know it's the league's best team, but you should never lose by 49 points. We talked about that earlier this year when the Warriors were demolished by the Toronto Raptors. No De'Aaron Fox is tough to overcome, but the Jazz didn't have Mike Conley or Donovan Mitchell in that game either. The Kings were just never in it from the very beginning. And, you know, ever since De'Aaron Fox has gone out of the lineup, it kind of feels like that was the beginning of the end for Sacramento. They almost have nothing left to play for here with just 10 games to go. They're 6 games back of the 10 spot for that play-in tournament. They do have 3 games coming up against the Oklahoma City Thunder in those 10 games remaining, but even that I don't think is going to be enough to make up that ground needed for a playoff push.
Yeah, you know, we talked about it a couple weeks ago and whether the Sacramento Kings were going to sit De'Aaron Fox. This looks like an unintentional sitting of De'Aaron Fox. We were lucky to come out with a win this week, beating the Dallas Mavericks. Unfortunately, we lost Harrison Barnes to an injury and an abductor strain during that game. But the Kings started out great, a 20-3 run to start the game. They only allowed 106 points. That's winning basketball. And unfortunately, as you mentioned, they were not able to follow that up with a humiliating loss against the Utah Jazz. No Marvin Bagley, no Harrison Barnes, no De'Aaron Fox. You're most likely going to lose. Rashawn Holmes was back. He was playing well. Other than that, not many good performances by the Sacramento Kings. The Utah Jazz did set a new record in franchise history in points per game, a record that had been held since 1978. Pretty amazing. Also, 49-point margin of victory is the largest in their franchise history. But, the tale of this tape basically comes down to field goal percentage. The Jazz were just on fire all night, couldn't miss a shot. They shot over 60% from the field. They shot 58% from three-point range. The Kings only got 24 rebounds in this game, which is just amazing to think of. Everything was going in for Utah, and it just was basically an insight into the Sacramento Kings season versus Utah Jazz. Just a blistering loss for them.
Yeah, there's no sugarcoating this in any way, shape, or form. I mean, look, you're down 3 regular starters. It's hard to win games against any team like that. I would have liked to have seen a little bit better showing, but the Kings have not been a deep team all year. They've tried to plug in guys here and there. The addition of Metu and Jones and Metu, guys we're going to talk about later, have been solid for the Kings. As well as getting guys like DeLon Wright and Terrence Davis, but they're not a deep team overall. And so if you're already missing 3 of your top players, 3 of your top scorers, that's a huge hole to overcome against any team. And it's the same thing that we have talked about all year long for Sacramento is consistency. They have not been able to string together, 2 solid weeks, even 4 games within 1 week consistently throughout the entire year. And when your hands are tied behind your back playing without some of your best players, it's that much more difficult to be consistent.
Speaking of best player, we are going to speak about him when we come right back. De'Aaron Fox truly has been a delight to watch this season for myself and many other Kings fans out there. Very happy to see the huge strides that he's made in his game. We talked about it just last week about De'Aaron Fox is becoming a star in this league. It just makes me so excited to tune in for next season. But unfortunately, he is out 10 to 14 days due to health and safety protocols. He's having an amazing season, 25 points per game. That really is a lot for a team to replace. Calvin, do you think we'll see De'Aaron through the rest of the season?
You know, I really wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see De'Aaron play another game for this year. It really is going to depend on how many games the Kings win while he's out for those 10 to 14 days. But, you know, it's really an unfortunate situation. You don't want to see your star player go out for any reason. However, it is comforting to know that he's not going to miss extended time because of being injured. It's merely a health and safety protocol sort of situation. And, you know, again, to be frank, the Kings really are out on the outside looking in here for the playoffs. So there's not a whole lot more to play for in general. De'Aaron's press conferences, post-game press conferences as of late have been a little tough to watch. He's clearly very, very frustrated with the way the season has gone in Sacramento, which is a good thing for your star player. You know, it's got to hurt to lose and to underachieve when you know that the team is better or capable of performing better than they have. So I certainly wouldn't be surprised to see him sit the rest of the year, would you?
You know, I'm kind of on the fence on this subject because, you know, with only 10 games left, how many of those games are the Kings actually going to win with or without De'Aaron Fox? And what is that going to do to their playoff positioning? I don't think that they have a chance to win an NBA title this season. You know, the chance to actually make the playoffs is very slim to none. But, you know, on the other side of the coin, you look at the Phoenix Suns last year, they excelled in the bubble. They won 8 in a row, didn't end up making the playoff, but somehow that momentum pushed them into this season. So I'm a little bit on the fence. I'm gonna leave that decision up to Monty and the coaching staff.
Yeah, I think the analogy there between Phoenix in the bubble and Sacramento is a good one. However, those bubble games were all essentially playoff games. The atmosphere, even though you didn't have any fans in the stands, but the intensity of the games, they were all playoff level games, and that really helped drive, I think, Phoenix's growth a lot. If De'Aaron Fox comes back and he's only available for 5 games and then they end up missing the playoffs after that, these games I don't think are going to have that same type of intensity feel around them. So I'm not so sure that how much of a lift it would give them going into the offseason regardless.
We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back.
Healed over to Rashawn Holmes. Great Euro step. Oh.
Welcome back. It's been a very hot topic in Sacramento all season long. Is Coach Walton the right person to lead this team? Are the pieces around him adequate enough for a young team's development, a team that expects to be turning the corner and becoming a playoff team sooner rather than later? Following a record loss at home to the Utah Jazz, we are back to the clipboard, so to speak, revisiting the question of, do the Kings need to make a change at head coach or in the coaching staff in its entirety sooner rather than later? I've been on record before saying that I don't think Luke Walton is the right person to be the head coach for Sacramento. This week, whether they lost by 49 points at home to the Utah Jazz probably wouldn't have changed that opinion. I don't think that Luke Walton is the right guy. I think that the Kings, at this point, doesn't make much sense to make a change right now with only 10 games to go in the season. But I fully expect a new head coach at the start of the 2022 season.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. And you know what? Unfortunately, most of the blame of this season has fallen on the shoulders of just Luke Walton. And it's really not all his fault. The coaching staff is a team in itself, and they work together. When you're giving up 150 points and other franchises are setting, you know, new records, you got to look around you. You know, Luke takes the blunt of the battle, or I mean of the damage. But you got to be looking at guys like Rex Kalamian. You got to be looking at Alvin Gentry. What is going on here? I, for one, was super excited to have Rex on the team. He had been with the Kings in the past. I loved what he did in LA. He's supposed to be this defensive-minded guy, and obviously it's not working. So, if Luke is back next season, I expect to see a huge shakeup in assistants and stuff like that. But ultimately, I'm going to have to agree with you. I think we're probably going to see an entire coaching makeover this offseason.
Yeah, and we can't hold this one game against the Utah Jazz responsible for all the coaching problems, or even making it a coaching problem just from that one game. Like we said, they were down 3 starters in that game. You're playing the league's best team. So it's certainly not a direct result of just that one game. However, a coach, all these guys might be good coaches, but they just might not be the right mix or the right fit for this group of players. Coaches are only as good as their ability to hold a player's attention and motivation over the course of a season. And to me, it feels like the Sacramento Kings as a group, whether they like having Luke Walton as their coach or not, have just kind of decided, that the season is over and it's time to move on to the offseason. And if you're not able to get the best effort out of your players night in and night out, that's when you start to lose your touch as a head coach. It doesn't matter about X's and O's at that point. So I think that's really what the Kings are experiencing right now, and maybe the offseason will reinvigorate them, and they'll decide to bring Luke Walton back for another shot at it. But I certainly wouldn't expect that, like you and I have just said. So we'll be right back with the Royal Report.
Metu, little hook shot, got it.
Welcome back, everyone. This week, the Sacramento Kings extended multi-year contracts out to Chimezie Metu and Metu Jones. Chimezie Metu, of course, has been with the Kings for a little bit longer than Jones. He has played well in spurts, a good spark plug for the Kings off the bench. I think that he provides them with a lot of energy and some good depth at the power forward position. Metu Jones, a bit of an NBA journeyman. He's played for 6 teams in his 5-year career in the NBA. He was actually on 4 NBA rosters this season alone, but he has finally found a home here in Sacramento. Another guy who can provide them with some interior defense off the bench. The Kings have really struggled to keep big men healthy this year, so signing these 2 guys I think is a very important thing to note for them at this moment in time.
Yeah, both deals that were inked this week to those 2 guys are a little bit different. Chimezie's deal is for 3 years versus Jones is just signed through the rest of the season and next season. Provides some more depth at the big position. The Kings have been having injury problems at that position over the last 2 seasons that has greatly impacted them. And both of these guys, they bring some versatility, they bring some defense, and they bring athleticism to that position. So I'm excited to have both of these 2 guys. Metu, shout out to all my Kings fans out there that were yelling at us last week for not mentioning Metu in the show. Metu has been all over the place, making key plays down the stretch. Love his hustle, love his defense. Thank you, Metu. Thank you so much. But yeah, very happy to have him on the team. Metu was actually drafted by the Spurs. You can't really go wrong there. Played for UFC. He's a California guy. He actually set the record for second most blocks as a freshman with UFC since Taj Gibson. So loves to play defense. He is more of a power forward center, can play both positions. So he's a little bit more versatile than Jones. Jones is more of a traditional center. But for me, the biggest question is, what does this mean for Marvin Bagley? Bagley, many of us thought was going to be available this week. He went back to Arizona to train with his family. He didn't rehab with the Kings, and he's back now. Possibly could return to action this weekend, but we're not really sure. I know James Ham has reported this last week that if Marvin Bagley were to suit up for the Kings next season, he would be shocked. So that right there shows you what the relationship is like for them. James usually has the inside scoop, so he has an idea of what's going on. But a bright spot for Bagley is both of these deals are non-guaranteed. So neither of these players could be on the Kings next season, and it could open up some more playing time for Marvin.
Yeah, and if Marvin doesn't return to the Kings, looking at the free agent market this year, it's pretty lacking in terms of big men, power forwards, and centers. So this, I think, is an insurance policy to take out flyers on both these guys who really haven't, seen much playing time. Metu is only averaging 11 minutes a game, and Metu Jones has only been with the Kings for a couple weeks now. So you really don't know what their true potential is. I think Metu has the bigger upside between the two players. If he can ever develop an outside shot, he could be a very, very serious role player for an NBA team. Hopefully, it would be the Sacramento Kings in the future. And of course, there's the question of whether or not they'll re-sign Richaun Holmes. So again, insurance policy to have these two big guys on the roster for next season. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, we'll dive deeper into the offseason by looking at some NBA mock drafts.
Slash fight hunger. Out of the timeout, the lob.
Welcome back. I know many of my friends who are Kings fans have all they've wanted to talk about this past week is mock drafts and what player the Kings will be adding, or players the Kings will be adding next season to help them get out of this slump. I've looked at many mock drafts this week, and the Kings are usually slated around that 7th or 8th spot currently. However, they do have odds to win the draft lottery and move up. They go as follows. The Kings have a 7.5% chance at pick number 1, a 7.8% chance at pick number 2, 8.1 at pick number 3, and 8.5% chance of landing pick number 4. These are based on current standings and current records for the teams in the league. The Kings also have a 19.7% chance at picking number 7 and a 34.1% chance at picking number 8. So if you were to take all probabilities there, the Kings are most likely to pick at number 8 in this next year's draft. In comparison, the Kings have a 32.4% chance of beating the Lakers tonight. So they have a better chance at landing the 8th pick in the NBA draft than winning a game tonight. Two guys that I had looked at that I have seen in mock drafts going to the Kings that I would be happy with. The first one is Jalen Johnson. He is a power forward out of Duke. I know many of you probably do not like to hear that, but Duke does put out some good players. There are very successful power forwards in the league that have come from Duke. So big fan of him. And then also Scotty Barnes, who we had talked about in last week's episode out of Florida State. I would be happy with either of those two guys. The Kings need wings. They need versatile guys. They can play multiple positions. So Calvin, who would you like the Kings to take at 7 or 8?
Yeah, well, you really hit it on the nail on the head there. There's so much changing every day with all of draft projections, and with the season not being over, it's a complete guessing game as to where the Kings will be picking in the draft. The good news for Sacramento is that this draft class has a lot of really great talent in it, and it's particularly in the top 10 players, which is expected to be where Sacramento will be making that selection. So there's a handful of players that I really like. If the Kings do end up getting one of the top 5 picks in the draft, there are 2 players that I think they should definitely target. One would be Evan Mobley, another guy that we've already talked about, center from USC, very, very versatile big man, compared to James Wiseman, but a more athletic, faster player with great rim protection. He is somebody that would be able to come in and contribute right away. The other would be Jonathan Kuminga. He played for the G League's Ignite team this year. Jonathan Kuminga is probably my favorite player in the entire draft. He is incredibly versatile, 6'8" wing. He can play small forward or power forward. He can guard multiple positions, and he's a bit of a playmaker as well, sort of a point forward. hybrid type player. I really, really like him. If they're somewhere in the 3 or 4 range and he's available, they would definitely be missing out by not taking him. If the Kings fall back a little bit further in the draft, I really love Moses Moody. He's a 6'6" shooting guard from Arkansas, a freshman this year who set all kinds of scoring records at Arkansas. He had a huge showing in the NCAA tournament. I think he would be a perfect guy to transition Buddy Hield out of Sacramento with. He's a more versatile defender than Buddy Hield is and can really shoot the 3 as well. If they somehow fall further back than that, picks 8, 9, 10 range, there are another couple players that I'm interested in. One would be Zaire Williams, who is a freshman from Stanford. A lot of people remember Zaire from his high school days when he played with Bronny James down in Southern California. He was by far the best player on that team, and they were very, very loaded with talent. Another very versatile wing who can guard as well. And then another guy who I think is a sleeper in this draft is Kai Jones. He's a center from Texas, 6'10", 6'11", freakish athletic ability for a guy his size, really, really good interior defender as well. If the Kings somehow fall to outside of the top 10, I think he would be a very safe pick for them at 11, 12, something in that range.
And as it's stated right now, if the Kings do not win another game for the rest of the season, they cannot fall out of the top 10. So hopefully, top 10 pick in this NBA draft.
Yeah, fingers crossed they lose every game. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Royal Report. We only have 2 weeks left in the NBA season, which means after today's show, there are only 2 more installments of the very first season of the Royal Report. However, Barry and I don't want to take the whole summer off. We want to continue to give you some Kings news coverage, as well as a few fun and interesting things that Barry and I are working on for this summer. Barry, what do we got for him?
So first off, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and watching this show. It's really been a pleasure. This is our first season running the Royal Report. We will be back next season. We will be back the season after that. We're getting better every episode. We really enjoy it, and thank you so much for tuning in and watching. A couple fun projects we have coming up this summer. As many of you might already know, Calvin is an absolute baller. He was the best player on our high school basketball team. Shout out to the Blue Devils, DHS, that's right, Davis High School. Calvin is going to be doing a Cal's Skills class. I will be recording. Calvin will be breaking down drills, moves, things you can do this summer to get in shape and prepare yourself for the next NBA season. Another fun project we're working on is fun things in a Kings uniform or a Kings jersey. Calvin and I are going to be doing some traveling this season. We've been cooped up for the past year due to the virus that has been on the loose. This summer, Calvin and I will be on the loose with Kings jerseys on, doing fun things, posting videos, pictures, all that fun stuff. So make sure you stay tuned to those 2 installments coming up, and we will also be doing a draft special. Calvin, you want to tell them a little bit about our draft special?
Yeah, so I'm not sure how many of you out there know this, but we did a draft special last summer leading into this season, or last fall, I guess it was, leading into this season. Everything has been so thrown off this year. But we have a very new and improved Royal Rebounds studio where we'll break down every pick in the first round. We'll be talking about a lot of key players. And of course, as the draft gets nearer and nearer, we'll be highlighting some key players that we expect the Kings to have a chance to take. We did not highlight Tyrese Haliburton in last year's draft. I did not think that there was any chance he would be available for them at number 12, and he was. So of course, things can always change, but we like covering the draft. I really love breaking down potential prospects and their chances of making it in the NBA. So that's something special that we enjoy doing. And we really look forward to having a fun summer. Like Barry said, we've been cooped up. It's time for us to get out and live a little. But we want to see what you guys are doing as well. So if you are doing any fun things in a Kings jersey, go ahead and send us pictures, videos, whatever you like. You can post them on our channel, and we'll be looking forward to seeing those as well.
Yeah, and it's a little bit different format for the draft special. We are in the Royal Rebounds studio doing the draft special. So if you have any interest in seeing what Calvin and I's knees look like, or our lower half of our body, we are not seated all the time. We are not in wheelchairs. We can walk, we can run. If you are interested in seeing that half of us, make sure you tune into that draft special. We'll be right back with Cowbell questions.
Welcome back. We're ringing the bell. It's time for Cowbell questions. Thank you guys again for your submissions. We continue to get an influx of questions out there, which Barry and I truly appreciate. You help make this show what it is with these questions. So we are going to do our best to give you the answers here. Let's get our first from the announcer.
Do the Kings struggle with opposing big men?
Well, this one comes from a faithful fan, Matthew. Thank you so much for your question. Well, are the Kings struggling with opposing big men? I think the Kings are basically struggling with everything. But if I were to answer your question truthfully, honestly, I would say no. The Kings are struggling with three-point shooters. They're struggling with people behind the line, transition defense, stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. The problem is big picture here for the Kings on defense. It's not necessarily an individual position. Richaun Holmes makes up for what he lacks in size with energy and effort. I think he's a pretty good interior defender, and he's somebody that I would definitely want the Kings to keep at the center position moving forward. But it's really a total team issue here. They are 29th in the league in opponents' offensive rebounds allowed, but that's not necessarily a direct result of it being a big man issue. Rebounding can come from anywhere. And like you mentioned, their biggest areas of improvement need to come with defensive rotations, which is a total team effort. They are dead last in the league in opponent field goal percentage and 29th in the league in opponent three-point percentage. So that's the area that they need to improve upon the most, and it's going to come from everyone on the team, not just their big men.
And as far as moving Richaun to the power forward position, I don't think I would be on board with that unless they were able to draft a guy like Evan Mobley. Then I might consider it. I still have a lot of concerns about that fit there. There's only really one guy I can name in the league that I would play next to Richaun Holmes at the center position. That's probably Anthony Davis. So unless you have a guy like that, I'm probably going to keep Richaun at the center.
Next question.
If Richaun Holmes does not resign, who do you believe will be his replacement?
Thank you, Rigo, for your question. As we mentioned before, the free agent market in terms of big men is not particularly outstanding this offseason, but there are a couple players out there who I think would sort of fill the gap, a little bit if they were to lose somebody like Richaun. And those players would be Cody Zeller, who's a free agent in Charlotte this year, a guy who's been a starter in this league for a long time, not one of the top tier centers in the league, but somebody who can definitely hold his own at the position. And then other couple of guys I like would be Nerlens Noel and Daniel Tice. Again, this is not somebody who's going to be a max contract type guy at the position, but these are two guys who have started before in this league. They've played for a number of years. They played in the playoffs. In Daniel Tice's case with Boston, he was really productive for them in the postseason last year. So those would be guys that I would be happy with signing if Richaun Holmes were to leave.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Nerlens. Loved watching him in college until he had that, knee injury. But, ultimately, I think Richaun Holmes will re-sign with the Kings and be the starting center next year. However, if he were to leave, I would probably be looking at one of those three guys in a Lakers uniform. It might not be a traditional guy, but Marc Gasol has talked about how The center rotation there is not ideal for all three of them. Obviously, they're just there to win a championship this year. Maybe one or two of them will re-sign, but you have three good centers there. Marc Gasol, Andre Drummond, and Montrezl Harrell. And I can't think that all three of those will be back with the Lakers next year. So if I miss out on a guy like Richaun Holmes, I'd probably be looking to bring in one of those three guys.
Next question.
Do they still have a shot at the play-in? How would you feel if they made it?
Well, this is a sad question. It really does not feel like there's much chance left here for Sacramento. If you look at the standings, as we mentioned earlier in the show, they're 6 games back right now of the 10th seed, which would be the final spot in that play-in tournament. There's only 10 games left in the season, so the Kings are really going to have to make up some ground quick. They're not going to have De'Aaron Fox for a good portion of those games. All that being said, it does not seem like there's much hope for them to make a run here and get to that 10th spot.
Yeah, thanks Tanvir for your question. Always appreciate you on our Instagram and YouTube. You've been very active, so we really appreciate you. To answer your question here, unfortunately, I don't think the Kings have much of a chance to make the playoffs or get a top pick in the NBA draft. Unfortunately, they are stuck in the middle once again. However, if they were to somehow make that play-in tournament, I would be ecstatic. I'm sure you would hear me for weeks yelling, screaming, having a great time, popping some gesture juices. The Kings are back in the playoffs. I cannot wait till it does happen. Next question.
Which King playing their first season here has impressed you the most?
Well, I'm not really sure about Calvin, but for me, this is a relatively easy question considering I am still looking for his jersey and it is sold out on Fanatics. I am going with Tyrese Haliburton. Very impressed with his first season as a King.
Yeah, the answer here is Tyrese Haliburton. There's no question about it. Anytime you have somebody who is one of the top 2 or 3 people in the Rookie of the Year voting, that person is going to be the most impressive in their first season with Sacramento. He's been more than, or better than advertised for Sacramento. Really have enjoyed watching him play and seeing him fit in with this team and develop throughout the course of his rookie year. And unfortunately, I tried to think of this question hard and look at some of the other players in their first year here to think if there was somebody possibly that impressed me just as much as Tyrese. And those guys just really haven't gotten enough run with Sacramento. A lot of these guys have really only played for the Kings in the second half of the year. I do like the addition of DeLon Wright. I think he is, out of all the new players in Sacramento, he's the most NBA ready. He's been a veteran in this league and played for some really good teams, and he can really do a lot out there. But the answer is Tyrese, absolutely. Thank you guys so much for your questions. That's all the time we have this week for Cowbell Questions. If you'd like to hear us answer a question on a future show, there's only 2 opportunities left for you to do so. Please write your questions in the comments screen below and hashtag them Cowbell Questions. We will be right back, and Barry and I will wrap up this week's show.
Welcome back. 4 games coming up this week. We got the Lakers, the Mavericks, the Thunder, and the Pacers. Tonight's game, no LeBron James, no De'Aaron Fox, and no Harrison Barnes. Robert Woodard is also sidelined. Calvin, who's going to win this game tonight?
Oh man, it's going to be a lot to ask of the Sacramento Kings to win this game, but that's the beauty of the NBA on any given night. It could be your night. So we're going to need some big games out of Tyrese Haliburton, Buddy Hield, and the bench is going to have to play huge too. They really are going to have to step up and fill those voids for Harrison Barnes and De'Aaron Fox, and of course Marvin Bagley still out as well. So it's going to be a tough week for the Kings, but hey, it's the end of the year here and it's time to finish strong.
Hey, and we have another game against the Dallas Mavericks.
That's right, we played Dallas.
We've beat them the past 2 times we've played,
win.
So good there. I have to think that Bagley's got to be returning for one of these games. The Pacers are below 500. The Thunder are below 500. They're just above us in the standings. So there are some games that compete this week. We will see. Want to thank you all for joining us on another episode of the Royal Report. We will see you all next week. And in the meantime, go Kings.
Go Kings.
Thanks, guys.